Chapter 92 Sword Talisman. Everyone who had seen this young man's actions all thought that their eyes must have failed them. Originally, when they saw the gray light turn and fly towards the crowd from the Seven Mysteries sect, they believed the midget had changed his mind, intending to first kill off the rest of the humble martial art disciples and then handle the gray-clothed person. Who would have imagined that the gray streak would fly into the crowd and actually land on the hand of a seemingly ordinary disciple, who effortlessly received it? This was far too much to believe. The Seven Mysteries sect side, including sect leader Wang and the gray-clothed man, felt both pleasantly surprised and relieved from the unexpected rescue. Wang Juchu was in ecstasy and was even more glad that he had the foresight to agree to let Han Li participate in the deathmatch. He knew that the survival of the participants in the deathmatch, as well as the survival of the Seven Mysteries sect, would henceforth depend entirely on this profoundly mysterious Dr. Han Li. Li Feiyu had understood what Han Li had stolen. At this moment, his mouth had dropped open and did not close for a while. Although he knew his close friend was somewhat outstanding, to be able to take away the immortal cultivator's flying sword was a feat Li Feiyu could only dream of, making him absolutely giddy. This actually went as far as to make Zhang Shuer, Elder Li, and the opposing Jia Tianlong wide-eyed and speechless. Each of their facial expressions was very wonderful to behold. Numerous gazes were shot out, included fear, doubt, and pleasant surprise, but all of them fell onto Han Li. Han Li had a smooth expression and was smiling all along. It seemed that he did not have even the slightest care for the spectators' attentive gazes. However, no one knew that behind that calm appearance, his mind was filled with endless depression. Only the heavens knew that Han Li absolutely did not want to take action. His original plan was to wait for the dwarf to negligently drop his golden barrier and then mount a sneak attack. Until then, he would conceal himself in the rear and use very small fireballs to easily kill the opposition. But who would have thought that the plan of the heavens would supersede that of men? Han Li, from simply seeing the gray streak fly about, had stirred an uncomfortable irritation and unconsciously used a technique he had learned earlier through endless practice, telekinesis technique. The result was an easy seizure of the object. Such a simple seizure was greatly unexpected. Han Li simply extended his magic power towards the gray streak and easily erased the dwarf's spiritual power, establishing a connection between him and the gray light. On one hand, Han Li had effortlessly seized control of the opponent's treasure and was secretly delighted. On the other hand, he now had no choice but to confront the dwarf, making him somewhat uneasy. He clearly understood he did not possess enough force to break the opponent's tortoise shell. The only thing giving him comfort was that his magic power had exceeded his opponent's several times over. Of course, the slightest sign of unease could not be seen in Han Li's expression. That was because he was fully aware that if one held the psychological high ground, then they would possess a great advantage in a true confrontation and would somewhat increase the odds of success out of thin air. This was a trick he had learned from within the blinking sword art manuals. As a result, after recognizing the dwarf as a great enemy, Han Li showed the opposite and instead showed an expression of having a card up his sleeve. He leisurely moved the treasure he had just taken back and forth in his hands. The gray streak remained spirited, and its length was indeterminate, its true form still unclear. Han Li raised his head to take a glance at the somewhat pale dwarf and slightly smiled. He lightly rubbed the gray streak in between his hands. The gray streak's brilliance was immediately exhausted, revealing its true appearance. It was actually a Taoist paper talisman. In addition, a picture of a small gray sword was drawn on this peculiar talisman. The small gray sword on the paper talisman was drawn vividly and lifelike, as if it were real. In addition, there was no magic power urging the small sword to move, yet it emitted a faint flowing light on its own, as if it were an exceptionally sharp sword. Its cold aura was menacing. However, he had second thoughts regarding this Taoist talisman. Recalling the previous great display of its outstanding mysterious power, he felt somewhat satisfied. After all, its ferociousness was seen with his own eyes, he was certain it will be quite useful later on. Han Li easily pocketed the talisman in his bosom. He didn't dare to swaggeringly use this item in front of its previous owner. Who knows what tricks the opponent could do with the talisman? In addition, he was quite unfamiliar with the telekinesis technique, having never practiced it on a suitable object. He supposed that if he were to use this object now, it would be very difficult to injure his opponent with it. Across from him, Monk Golden Light stared helplessly as Han Li pocketed the treasure he had taken from him. He could not help but become furious, but he did not have the courage to step forward and tear it away from him. It should be known that since the opponent was able to easily erase his spiritual power from the talisman, his opponent's magic power should be several times deeper than his own. He truly did not have the courage to contest against him. Han Li saw that the dwarf was strained. Monk Golden Light was clearly angry but did not dare to speak, knowing that he was already subdued by his opponent. Not knowing who was superior, Han Li's nerves couldn't help but want to settle this matter even more. Finally, deciding to be a fox masquerading as a tiger, Han Li exerted the Imperial Flight technique on his body. His figure flashed several times until he arrived in front of the dwarf. Seeing Han Li move in the way that gods appeared and demons vanished, Monk Golden Light grew even more fearful. He could not help but recoil several steps, timidly saying in a soft voice, "What are you going to do? I'm not conquering this region's resources, nor did I take any spiritual herbs or immortal elixirs. I only received a few of these mortals' gold, nothing more. Furthermore, I didn't violate your local clan's interests. You have no reason to kill me." Hearing these words, Han Li was secretly delighted. He knew the opponent had mistaken him as a representative of some immortal cultivation clan. His confidence suddenly rose a bit. He deliberately gave a faint smile, and soon after, he feigned a mysterious identity and softly asked, "I don't know who your excellency is. Why have you taken the initiative to participate in mortal affairs and disturb the local order of the secular realm? This puts my clan in a difficult position." Hearing the opponent's mind town and thinking that Han Li lacked the intention to dispose of him, the dwarf immediately roused his spirit. His two small eyeballs spun around in several circles and he hastily said in an evasive manner, "I am a disciple of the Yi clan from the Chinyi mountain range. I was simply passing by. Because I was an old friend of the feral wolf gang's commander, I couldn't resist their plea and decided to help them out. By no means did I have any intention of deliberately offending your clan. Brother, I hope you'll forgive me. What is the name of your noble clan? In the future, this humble man will certainly visit your clan to apologize for this offense."